welcome back to another lecture. In this lecture, we are going to look into the creation of infrastructure using your Terraform. Okay, so we are in day 3. So we are going to deploy infrastructure using Terraform. Okay, so to do this, we need some of the Terraform commands. These are the commands that we are going to learn today. Okay, so we'll go one by one. So I've just documented here. I've not written any code here. I will do it in my Visual Studio Code. So these are the things that we are going to learn today. So what are the importance of these commands, how we use it, what are the benefits? We are going to learn that in this video. Okay, so if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please consider subscribing and share it among your friends. Okay, now let's get started. Okay, so the first infrastructure that we are going to create today is a VPC, Amazon VPC. Okay, so first, if you want to understand how things work in Terraform, I would recommend you to create the same resource using your console by manual process. Okay, when you create your VPC, what are the things that you require? Everything you will understand, right? Let's go with VPC only as of now. So here, if you see, it is asking for a name, which is optional, and it is asking for IPv4 CIDR block. It is asking for IPv6, whether you need to provide it here, and you are also providing tenancy, whether it is default or dedicated, right? So these things you will provide, and you will create your VPC in your console. If you want to do the same thing using Terraform, it is really simple. Okay, so for that you can take the reference from your AWS VPC Terraform registry documentation. Okay, here if you see, they have given this one, basic usage with the tags, right? You can copy this one and you can make use of that. If you want to add additional parameters, for example, here if you see, we are only providing CIDR block. CIDR block we have specifying here also, right? Here we are specifying IPv4, but here if you see, if I want to specify IPv6, I don't have that option, but here in console I have it. But if you see, there are many options here: no IPv6, IPAM, Amazon provided, and IPv6. Like usually in the organizations, we go with Amazon provided IPv6 CIDR block, right? So here also, if you want that visibility, what you can do is you can come down. You have something called as argument reference. Arguments are nothing but so the things that you pass on while creating the resource, the important parameters that you pass while creating an infrastructure, we call that as argument. Right here, for example, name is one of the argument, IPv4 CIDR block is one of the argument, CIDR 6 is one of the argument, network border group is one of the argument, right? Tenancy is one of the argument, tag is one of the argument. In the same way, while coding, we call that as argument, not as a parameter. Okay, here you have many different options. Like if you want to see here, we have IPv6 CIDR block, if you are going with Amazon provided IPv6 CIDR block, you can select that also, right? There are many things like tags. You have assign generated IPv6 CIDR block. This is one, this one will be allocated by Amazon itself. What I mean is, so we selected Amazon provided IPv6 block, right? So in the same way, if you want to go with in your Terraform, you want to select this one. If you see here, assign generated IPv6 CIDR block, it is an optional. If you want, you can select either way, it is fine, right? So again, one more important thing here is that you need to be very careful. So there are some arguments which are optional and there are some arguments which are required. So required in the sense, if you do not provide those arguments, you will not be able to create the resources. For example, in if you are creating a VPC, IPv4 CIDR block is must and should provided, right? So if you do not provide IPv4 CIDR block, how will you create a VPC, right? So that is why it is important. CIDR block is important for you to give it. But here in the documentation, they have specified it as optional, but it should be changed. I don't know why it is reflecting like that in this documentation. So there are many things that needs to be corrected. I think Terraform is working on it and they will make those changes. Okay, so these are the things that are required while creating an VPC. And after creating the VPC, what will happen is in the background, you will get some things, right? So for example, let us go with the default VPC and see what are the things that are there. If I select this default VPC, you will have some details, right? VPC ID and all, it will be given to you after creating the VPC itself. In the same way, if you want to access those also, it is possible by using attributes. Attributes means outputs, you can say. After creating the VPC, whatever the important parameters that you will get, those we call that as attribute. So here if you see, ARN will be generated as soon as you create an resource in Amazon. It will always go ahead and create an ARN. In the same way, ID will be created, VPC ID, you see that here, right? And you will have the instance tenancy, and these things you will get it, right? If you want to use it somewhere, you can use these attributes also. Okay, so these are output attributes and these are input arguments. Okay, so these are the required things you need to know while creating an infrastructure. Okay, now let us go ahead and create the infrastructure itself. Okay, so this one, what I want you to do is you create a separate folder for all the resources that we create. For example, I'm teaching how to create VPC today. Tomorrow I'll be extending still more. I'll be teaching how to create subnets, how to create NAT gateways, how to associate subnets with your route tables. All those things we are going to do that in the coming lectures. So create a separate folder for this one. I've named it as 30 days of Terraform. Under that I'm going with first resource. Okay, I'll make sure to upload this to my GitHub repository. So watch out for the GitHub repository. The link will be in the description. Okay, so what I've done is I've created two files with the name one vpc.tf, where I'll be creating VPC resource here, and provider.tf. You already know what is provider because you have already watched the second video that I have already dropped, right? So if you do not know, provider means you're saying that Terraform needs to interact with AWS, right? So that is how you're trying to authenticate with AWS, right? So let us add provider block first. Okay, I'll just say provider. Okay, and I'll just say AWS and add this block. And while giving provider, if you do not know what are the arguments that you need to pass, just click on control and space. Here you will see what are the things that you need. Okay, so the first thing that we need to give is region, right? In which region you want to create the resource in. I'll say US East 1. Okay, next thing that you need to provide is profile. Which profile are you trying to use, or which user are you trying to be, right? So if you watch my previous video, I was using Terraform user, right? I'll use the same thing. Okay, that's all you have to do in the provider.tf, right? So we are making, instead of writing all the code in the same file, what we are doing is we are just differentiating it and making a separate file for all the things that we do, right? So if I go ahead and add the provider.tf and also VPC in the same file, it will be a mess for you to understand. Like if someone comes in, if they want to read the code that what we have done, they need to understand it in the very first go. So that is why we are differentiating these things. Okay, so if you do not know the, if you want this reference document, right, how to create a VPC using Terraform, this is the reference documentation that we have taken from the Terraform documentation itself. But if you want that to be also available to you, I'll make sure to add that. Okay, so don't worry about this text file. This contains all the things that are required for the next coming videos. Okay, now let's come here. Let us concentrate only on this block. Okay, so if you see here in the vpc.tf, the first line, this is very important. So here we are telling Terraform that we are creating the resource. That is why we have specified resource here, right? Previously we specified provider in the provider.tf file. That means we are trying to say Terraform that we are going to use AWS, please download AWS plugin for me. That is what we have done. In vpc.tf we are saying Terraform that I'm going to create a Amazon AWS VPC resource. That is what we have specified here. Resource indicates we are trying to create a resource, and what resource are you creating? We are creating AWS underscore VPC. You cannot name anything you want here. It is always defined by Terraform itself. So AWS underscore VPC is defined by Terraform. You cannot change that. It is the name of the resource. Okay, so it is, sorry, it is a resource type that you are trying to create. Resource type means we have many different types. We have AWS EC2, we have IAM, those things are there, right? So those things we will specify in the middle. Okay, so the next thing that you are seeing here, it is the logical name, just the logical name. So don't think that whatever the name that we specify here, those names will be taken to your VPC. No, it is not like that. Whatever the name that you provide here, it will be used only inside this Terraform, Terraform scripts, right? Let's say in case if I want to create subnets in future, while creating subnets, I need to take the reference from VPC, right? I need to provide the VPC ID. Where will I get my VPC ID? I need to reference this line, right? So that is why we added this one, right? So we need this logical name or the reference name you can consider. Okay, so don't think that this name will be carried to your resource. No, this is just a logical name. Okay, and it is applicable only inside the Terraform file. Okay, next we are passing the parameters or the arguments that we saw in the documentation already. So what is the CIDR block that you want to use? So I'll just say inside double quotes, I'll just say 10.0.0.0/16. Okay, so this is my CIDR block. What is the instance tenancy? So if you don't understand anything, right, go to your console. Okay, so console will give you lot many details. So if you go to console, let's click on create VPC. Here if you see tenancy, so here we have two options. One is default and dedicated. See, so instance tenancy, you can just go ahead and by default we'll always go with default itself. I'll specify default. Enable DNS host names. So these are required to have your DNS host names. So we'll try that as a, we'll type that as true, right? So if you want to see what values it will take, right? So you can go back to your Terraform documentation. So enable DNS, right? So you can search for that here. Okay, here if you see enable DNS host name, it is a boolean. Enable or disable DNS host names in the VPC. Default, it will be false itself. Even if you do not mention that, it will be false. But if you mention it as true, it will take this value that you will specify. Okay, so assign generated IPv6 CIDR block, whether you want the IPv6 CIDR block for your VPC or not. So by default, this will also be false itself. I have gone through the documentation. If you want, you can go here also. If you see here, by default, it is false. So now we'll change that to true. Let us ask Terraform to add a IPv6 CIDR block and the tag. So you can give tags to your VPC. So here we are giving name tag. So here if you see, while creating the resource, we are adding name tag, right? So instead of doing it in the console, we are doing it in the Terraform. So we need to specify that here. So what is the name tag that you want to give? So I'll just say Terraform VPC. Okay, I'll just mention Terraform VPC. Okay, so this is all you have to give to create Terraform resources. Okay, so let's save this file. I'll save all of them. Save all. Okay, so now to run this script, what you have to do is open a terminal. I'll just click on new terminal. So make sure you are inside the folder that you have created. If you see, I am in my first resource folder, right? So but here in the terminal we are here, right? So let me change the directory to first resource. Okay, I'll just say cd first resource and hit tab. It will automatically fill in. I'll hit enter. Okay, now let me clear the screen. So now what you have to do after creating resource, after adding the provider.tf, the first thing that you need to do is you need to initialize the Terraform. How you will do it? You will just type in Terraform init, hit enter. So basically this is going to download all your plugins that are required to interact with AWS, right? So it will download AWS plugin for this particular folder. Here if you see, we only have 3 files as of now, but now if you see, there is one more file that got added, .terraform. So that will contain your provider information. So whatever provider information that you specify here, it will be downloaded. Okay, now if you see here, Terraform has successfully initiated it. Okay, so that's confirmed that it downloaded all the plugins that are required. Okay, now let me clear the screen once again. Okay, now so the next thing that you will have to do is Terraform plan. So I'll tell you what it is going to do. I'll hit enter. Terraform plan. Basically what this Terraform plan will do is it will show you here itself in the terminal. So what are the resources that will be created when you execute? When you actually create a resource, what are the things that will be deployed into AWS console, right? You will get the blueprint of those by running Terraform plan. Terraform plan will not create the resource actually, so it will just give you the blueprint. If you see here, you are getting the blueprint of whatever the things that will be created. So everything that is in plus green color, so that means it is going to create it. If it is in red and minus symbol is there, that means it is going to delete it. Okay, so if there is one more thing is there, tilde. So basically if there is any changes that has been done, so that thing will be appearing here. Okay, now if you see, these are the things that we are creating. So ARN, if you see here, it is saying known after apply. So if you know AWS clearly, so once the resource is created, you will get the ARN, right? So that is why it is saying known after apply. And assign generated IPv6 true, that means we are getting the IPv6. And CIDR block, this is the CIDR block that we are getting, and there are lot many known after apply, that means it will be known only after you are applying. And what is the name that we are giving? We are giving Terraform VPC, right? So this is the name tag that we have added, and this will be created when you go ahead and apply the Terraform plan. So this is just a blueprint. It is not going to create anything. It is telling clearly it will be created. These resources will be created if you apply it, right? So next, what you can do is you can directly apply this into your AWS. Okay. So to apply, there is a command called Terraform Apply. Okay. If you just hit enter, it will one more time give you the plan whatever we saw in the previous command. So it will display once again, and it will ask you for the confirmation. Are you sure you want to deploy this resource or not? If you see, again it is showing the same thing when we ran the Terraform plan. And here if you see here, it is asking, do you want to perform the following actions? So here you can just click on you just type in yes or no. If you type yes, it will go ahead and create the resource. If you leave that as it is not going to create the resource. Okay, now I'll just say yes and I'll hit enter. Basically now this Terraform will go ahead and create my VPC. If you see here, it has started creating VPC. AWS underscore VPC dot VPC, it is in creating state. So this will take some time to create the resource in your AWS. See, if you see here, apply complete, resource 1 is added, 0 changed and 0 destroyed. Now let us go back to our AWS console. Let me go to VPC. Previously we were only having default VPC, that is this one. Now we got this one, right? So we created this resource. Let's see if we have that or not. IPv6 we have, right? We specified that. And CIDR, if you see here, this is the CIDR that I used in the code also, right? See, this is the code that we used. and this is the VPC ID, right? So these things got created, right? So this is how you create your infrastructure using Terraform, right? So next, one more thing you need to know, apart from creating the resource. So if you want to delete the resource, there is one more option, right? So how do you delete the resource? There is a command for that also, Terraform Destroy. Okay, you need to type in Terraform Destroy. Hit enter. Again, it will show you what are the things that it will going to destroy. Okay, so let's wait for that. So if you see here, this is saying it will be destroyed. It is not destroyed yet, but it is telling you that it will be destroying. Previously, if you remember, it was plus and it was create. Now if you see, it is minus and it is destroy, right? If you click or type in yes here, it will go ahead and destroy your resources. Okay, let me type in yes. So this is going to destroy your resources in your AWS console. If you see here, destroy completed. Okay, now if you do not want this, if you do not want to type yes again and again, what you can do is you can just type in Terraform apply hyphen hyphen auto hyphen approve. Okay, Terraform apply hyphen hyphen auto hyphen approve. So you are automatically approving it. You are telling Terraform that do not ask me, do not prompt me to type yes, go ahead and create your resources without asking me. In the same way, if you want to do the destroy also, you can do that. So if you just type in Terraform destroy hyphen hyphen auto hyphen approve, but in production it is not recommended to go with this option because it will be a huge mess if you go ahead and destroy the resource that is already running, right? So be careful with this one when you are working in Terraform. All right, so this is how you create your first infrastructure using Terraform. I hope you learned a lot in this video. I know there was too many things that I've covered today. So if you're liking the content that I'm creating, please consider subscribing and share it among your friends. Thank you, and I will see you in the next one.
You can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and Instagram. And you can subscribe to the channel of MoogleLabs. And you can contact us on given number, and you can mail also on info@mooglelabs.com. So subscribe and hit the bell icon for any updates.